In table of contents, the chapter 1 starts with page number 1. But what are the weird things written before that? Yes, contents like disclaimers, acknowledgements, etc. are kept separate, numbered separately in the table of contents. Huh? Your books have table of contents? Huh? Hello, namaskar, welcome, swagatam. You are with the Versatile Doctor. My name is Dr. Abhinav Atul, an author, a YouTuber, and a TLB member. This is the episode 6 of Let's Talk Self-Publishing series, the video series on TLB, the digital city, where I try to take you one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a self-published author. Today's topic is everything that you include in your book other than your main content. What those are, why are they important, and how essential or not so necessary each of them are. First of all, let me address the most common question. If you have written a novel, you can simply print it starting at the chapter 1 and ending at the end and publish it with the cover that has nothing on it except the title. No one is going to stop you, but that is not how it is usually done. Even for non-fiction or even textbooks, we don't have any volume that contains only the main matter from first page to the last page. The other elements, starting from copyright to disclaimer to author's bio and the blurb, everything is added to make the book more of a complete story, the complete experience in itself. Kind of the appetizer before the main course and the dessert after it. You can have a meal without those, right? But having them just makes the experience more palatable and more complete. We have talked about the title, subtitle and blurb in episode 4. Check that out here. But that is not all there is, right? So you open the cover of a book. What is the first thing you see? The title of the book on paper. Nothing to discuss about it, it is just customary. This page may also have the publisher's logo. For bestsellers and literary phenomena, the first thing you might see under the cover is praise for the book, which again is self-explanatory and may not be relevant for self-published authors like you and me unless we have a bomb of a marketing team behind the book. So what else? If it is a fantasy book, people usually place the map of their world inside the front cover of the first page. This is no different for something like The Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire, or for an indie author's work like The Wandering Star from S.P. Mitson. So the first thing that you see, one of the first things that you see inside the front cover is the map. And that brings to my mind all these books that I show to you in my videos, apart from my own 2 novels, are either purchased by me for reading or given to me by the author. But mostly I read on Kindle. That is why I don't have a bibliophilic bookshelf behind me. If you are a self-published English fiction author and you want to help me make a more comprehensive picture of what the authors think and how their dream gets translated into the reality of a physical book, please send your book to me. Check out the full announcement here or in the video description. Moving on, we are still in the first few pages inside the cover. Then comes the most important and universally present page, the copyright page. This includes the copyright notice, the year of publication, ISBN, publisher information, and sometimes disclaimers. We have talked about copyright in previous videos, and this is where you assert your rights to your work. This page also sometimes mentions the credits to the cover designer or the editor and has the details of the printing press where the book was printed, as we saw in episode 2. Usually, the author does not have much to give in terms of inputs for this page. The publisher populates this page, or in case of Kindle, there is a template which you can edit if you want. Then comes the dedication. Again, not an essential part of a book. Many books have it, many don't. It's your choice. Then there is an epigraph, another optional section. So this is a quote, maybe a real quote from a real famous person or an excerpt from another famous book, or it may even be an imaginary quote. Like in Dune, Frank Herbert starts each chapter with an excerpt from another book that exists in his fantasy world only. The book is called Manual of Muad'Dib. Or like Neil Gaiman quoting from the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nutter, which in his book Good Omens. The epigraph is like an external expert setting the tone for the book. Then comes the table of contents. One would think that the table of contents would naturally be the most essential part of any book, right? Well, wrong. This book doesn't have a table of content. Starts with part 1, chapter 1. This one doesn't either. The international sensation It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover also doesn't have a table of contents. Now, why would you not want to have a table of contents in your book? Well, if you want to have your reader fully immersed in the narrative without any idea where the story is going, what the structure is, and where any of the important points might be, you omit the table of contents. The readers start reading and they keep reading. If they need to stop, they memorize the page number or put a bookmark or something, but they don't know which chapter numbers are where in the book or the names of the chapters. I mean, there are some authors, me included, who like to name their chapters in descriptive phrases instead of just chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. In such books, just reading the table of contents might be considered a spoiler, right? Of course, this decision is between the author and the publisher and is not a written rule anywhere. Non-fiction books or textbooks, for obvious reasons, always have a table of content, regardless of whether the chapters are just chapter numbers or the descriptive chapter names. Now, a common practice is to start the main story at page 1, as in the Arabic numeral 1. Everything that precedes is numbered in Roman numerals, usually the small Roman numerals. Now, the table of contents can come right after the copyright page or just before the prologue. I don't think there is a standard placement for that. It depends on the author and the publisher. Even on Kindle, you have the option to move the table of contents up or down the pages. So you should focus on the descriptions of these elements as I am listing them rather than the serial number in which they would appear in your book. Now coming to disclaimer. Again, optional but very important if your book needs it. It usually goes like, this is a work of fiction. Any similarity with persons or places, dead or alive, is completely coincidental. As I mentioned earlier, if your book only needs this generic disclaimer, you can simply write it on the copyright page. But if there are other things like trigger warnings, then you may want to have a separate disclaimer page. In non-fiction books, the disclaimer is more important. Like in self-help books, you need to mention how authentic or trustworthy your information is for the readers. Can they take the information in the book at its face value, or should they take it with a grain of salt or do their own research? Disclaimers, either merged with the copyright page or printed in a separate section, are considered essential in the legal sense. Now, acknowledgements is a good section to have where you thank your team, your readers, etc. You can have acknowledgements at the beginning or the end, in the front matter or the back matter. It is a common courtesy to mention your beta readers, editors, your publishing team, and anyone who has worked with you to give birth to the book, regardless of whether you have paid them to or not. But of course, it is up to you. Then there are two things that usually confuse people: foreword and preface. Foreword is an introduction to the book written by someone other than the author, often a well-known expert in the field, another writer, or a respectable figure. It lends credibility to the book by having an established name vouch for its value or quality. Sometimes there is a context that needs to be set by an expert in the field. This is usually signed and dated with the identity of the writer who has written the foreword. If you want your book to have an impactful foreword, you should work on getting it before publishing, of course, which means during the editing or beta reading phase. But it is not uncommon to add the foreword later after the first edition of the book has been released and read. On the other hand, preface is an introduction to the book written by the author to explain why they wrote the book. This can have a story of inspiration or an anecdote that the author would like the readers to have in mind to be able to connect more deeply with the story. The preface may also have a guide on how to read the book to enjoy the most, or even the trigger warnings if not mentioned elsewhere. Together, everything that I have mentioned so far can be taken as front matter. Now we come to the back matter, which, as the name suggests, refers to the elements after the end of your main content. Now let me repeat, the location of most of these elements are not set in stone. Some can be put either in the back or in the front matter, like other books by the same author or other books in the same series. Now this can be in the beginning or at the end. About the author is a section which is usually present in the back matter, but with duplex printing, sometimes the author bio can be placed in the inside front cover or at the sleeve of the hardbound. Regardless of the position, the about the author section is a little bit more detailed than the one on the back cover. If your printing allows, your photo, the photo of the author, can be added too. Both the author's bio in the back cover and that inside the book are written in the third person, and it should not be considered your professional resume, but rather a highlight. So beware what you write in these details. Most readers usually don't want to know the author's date of birth or their place of residence or the degrees. So write only things which are contextual and, more importantly, interesting to read. In a nutshell, the author bio and the description are written so that the reader might get hooked to the author and look to read more books by them. Some things which only make sense in the back matter are like appendix, like definitions or abbreviations used in your book, or family trees in case of complex fantasy novels with complex storylines, like in A Song of Ice and Fire. If your book contains a lot of words in a different language or many scientific terms, you can add a glossary of terms in this. References or bibliography is another thing that makes sense only in the end, especially in non-fiction books. An index is something used in mainly textbooks and similar non-fiction books, which is an alphabetical listing of topics and where to find them in the book. Now, Kindle's X-ray feature can also work like an index. An author's note can be placed where the author may thank the readers and solicit their time to leave a review. Then, towards the end of the book comes a teaser about the next book in the series or a sample chapter of other books by the same author. So, you see, there are more than 15 elements other than the main content of your book that we discussed here. But that is not the end. Now we will talk about prologue and epilogue. How can I miss that? See, if the main story was a play, the prologue and epilogue could be considered as the narrator's introduction and concluding remarks before and after the play. And that is arguably how the prologue and epilogue started to become the norm in modern writing. But like everything else, these two have evolved and not limited to any format or content. So, prologue can be an introduction of the characters or a scene from the same story in the past, or a scene which is in the middle of the story but presented out of context just to create intrigue, like a trailer. There is no rule that the prologue must be in the past or must depict the childhood of the protagonist or anything. It can be anything the author wants to say to hook the readers in from the first page. Of course, the prologue immediately precedes the first chapter. Now, epilogue. Again, no rules or norms. The epilogue may be the conclusion of the story or just a means to tie up loose ends, or a teaser for the next installment in the series, anything that you want it to be. In a sense, prologue and epilogue can be considered the part of the main content of the book by itself. The thing is, when you are self-publishing, it is your book and all the decisions are on you. You may not have a team or a person who will guide you in all the steps or even give you enough information for you to make a decision to which of these elements you want to keep in your book or not. The main objective of this series is to make sure that you, the indie authors, are aware of everything that self-publishing entails other than the actual writing. In that direction, I hope today's video has given you some interesting and important insights. Do let me know if you learned something new today or if you know something which I missed. Do subscribe to TLB The Digital City YouTube channel for more content like this, and check out our website www.tlbcity.com. Until the next episode and another topic for discussion in the Let's Talk Self-Publishing series, this is Dr. Abhinav Atul signing off from TLB, the Digital City. Namaskar. Don't forget to check out the whole playlist of Let's Talk Self-Publishing videos in this playlist.